Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our Common Read event. We have an exciting 3 weeks of events scheduled for you with over 30 events on various topics. Our goal is for you to make connections across the disciplines. It's going to be fantastic. So please try to come to as many events as you possibly can. Again, I'm Susan Madera. I'm the director of the Common Read. And we are very excited for today's event. Some of you were with us yesterday for 2 of our events, and it's only going to get better. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jean Murley, who's the coordinator of the Common Read this year.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Jean Murley in the English department. Some of you know me. I see a few faces that I know out there. And I recognize some of you from yesterday's events. We're really, really excited about the Common Read this semester. As Susan Madera told you, we have over 30 events happening. This is one of them today. And we're thrilled that people are reading Picking Cotton and that you're all so interested in it and that you're learning about wrongful conviction and you're learning about forgiveness. It's really, really exciting for all of us. So welcome to today's event. We have a special guest from the Innocence Project, and some of you have learned about the Innocence Project through reading the book and also in your classroom discussions. The Innocence Project is a group of lawyers who work to free people who are wrongfully convicted. So Karen Thompson is a staff attorney at the Innocence Project. They're based here in New York, and she litigates post-conviction DNA cases throughout the country. She also supervises students through the Innocence Project Clinic at Cardozo Law School. As an associate at Morrison & Forster LLP and Orrick, Harrington and Sutcliffe LLP, Ms. Thompson litigated a wide range of pro bono, that means for free, essentially, cases, in addition to an international arbitration practice. Prior to joining the Innocence Project in July 2012, she served as the Director of Scholarship Programs at the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Ms. Thompson graduated from Carleton College in 1993 and from Northwestern University School of Law in 2003, and she also holds an MA in Performance Studies from New York University. So please help me welcome Karen Thompson.
So among other things, that means that I have a lot of student loan debt, but it was worth it. Thank you, Jean, for inviting me here today. I love doing these presentations, and I love doing them for a lot of reasons, one of which is that my parents are immigrants here. They're Jamaican. My grandmother couldn't read or write, and my grandfather was a fisherman. And so I believe very strongly in what I think America can offer. I think that the fact that we live in a country where someone at some point thought everyone was entitled to an education through public schools is a brilliant thing. I think that the fact that we live in a country where someone thought it was important that every single person got to have a lawyer, whether they had money or not, is a very important thing. And that's why I became a lawyer, because I wanted to be involved in a world where the law could work for justice. But unfortunately, our system is very, very broken. It gets it wrong a lot. It doesn't function the way it should be. And we're getting to a point where money is overwhelming justice. And so I hope that we can have a big talk about some of these issues and some of the things we're going to talk about today after I finish my presentation. But I honestly, I'm very honored to be here. So thank you for having me. So, thank you. So I am a staff attorney at the Innocence Project. I've worked here for about 4 years. The Innocence Project has been around for about 25 years. Has anyone heard of Barry Scheck? Does anyone know who Barry Scheck is? Anyone know who O.J. Simpson is? Ah, okay, so everyone knows O.J. Simpson. So Barry Scheck became kind of a famous person because of O.J. Simpson. And the reason why he became famous is because he did a cross-examination of a DNA expert at O.J. Simpson's trial, okay? And at that trial, he not only kind of introduced the world to DNA as a forensic tool, but he also showed how DNA can be manipulated, or how evidence can be manipulated in a way that doesn't prove what it's supposed to prove. And so on the heels of that trial, Barry decided that he wanted to start an organization where DNA could be used to help criminal defendants. So that's how we got to be the Innocence Project. We are a national litigation organization. That means that we work all across the United States, in all 50 states, and we use DNA testing to prove an innocence claim. So if somebody comes to us and says, I did not commit this crime, if there is DNA that we can find, that we can test, we may take that case, we will litigate that case in courts all around the country, and hopefully get the testing and hopefully prove that person to be innocent. Now, very honestly, a third of our cases include our clients. That means that the DNA shows that they actually did commit the crime, okay? But our point isn't that we're just here for people that we know are 100% innocent. Our point is that DNA is one of the only tools that can show whether someone is 100% definitively innocent or guilty of the crime that they committed. And we think it is the clearest tool and the clearest path to true justice. Since 1992, and this is actually wrong, so since I started doing this presentation, we've exonerated 5 more people. Okay, so since 1992, 337 people have been exonerated using DNA testing, and that's just through our office in New York. There are Innocence Projects all over the country that are not directly related to us. They're in almost every state, and they are all doing their own cases. So when you add everybody up together, we've exonerated about 1,200 people, with last year being 140 people alone. Okay, so there's a very limited number of attorneys doing this work. And with that limited number of attorneys, with a very limited amount of funding, we've demonstrated that this many people are innocent and have been locked up for years and years and years. So clearly there's something deeply wrong with how we are sending people to prison. And our work here is to make sure that we interrupt those wrongdoings. I'm going to show you a little bit of a video and we'll talk about it.
Chicago has a long history of false confessions. A Chicago police board found former Commander John Burge guilty of physically abusing suspects, from the use of electric shock to putting a gun to a suspect's head. So far, more than 85 convictions have been overturned in Illinois since 1989, many as a result of police misconduct.
Quite simply, what Cooperstown is to baseball, Chicago is to false confessions. It is the Hall of Fame.
Peter Neufeld was one of the defense attorneys representing these men. He's the co-founder of the Innocence Project, an organization that's helped exonerate 300 wrongfully convicted men nationwide with the use of DNA testing.
There are more juvenile false confessions in Chicago than any place else in the United States. What's happening? It's not because the kids are different that makes them more vulnerable to confessing. It's because the way the police keep pounding and pounding and pounding away in those interrogation rooms, you get innocent kids to confess to crimes they didn't commit.
Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez disagrees. Responding to public pressure, she set up a new unit within her office to re-examine questionable prosecutions. But she defends the actions of the police in these 2 cases.
We have not uncovered any evidence of any misconduct by the police officers or the state's attorneys that took the statements in these cases.
Alvarez still believes the confession Terrell Swift gave in the Nina Glover case, despite the fact there was no DNA evidence linking him or the others to the crime.
Did you find any of the boys' DNA on the victim?
No, we didn't.
Did you find any of their DNA in the basement of the house?
No.
How do you explain that the boys would say they raped a woman and there not be any DNA evidence? Doesn't it strike you as odd?
Well, we would love to have DNA on everything and every piece of evidence that we have in every crime, but it doesn't necessarily, occur.
Last year, the Innocence Project retested the one DNA sample that was recovered inside the victim, Nina Glover. It was submitted to the National DNA Database, and a match was made to Johnny Douglas, a serial rapist and convicted killer who is now deceased. But the new discovery did not change Anita Alvarez's mind.
You find out years later that in fact the DNA found inside the victim's body belonged to Johnny Douglas. And Johnny Douglas is a convicted serial rapist and murderer. That doesn't tell you that he most likely is the person who killed this woman?
No, it doesn't. Is he a bad guy? Absolutely he is, absolutely. But can we prove just by someone's bad background that they committed this particular crime? It takes much more than that.
For her to just say DNA is not everything, well, what else do you have if DNA don't matter?
This was a rape and a murder. How can you say DNA is nothing?
Why would a confession trump DNA evidence?
Because confessions are incredibly compelling. Nobody can understand how they would ever be goaded into confessing to something they didn't do.
Saul Casson is a psychology professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and has studied police interrogation practices and false confessions for 27 years.
One would think DNA is supposed to solve our problems. It's supposed to identify the perpetrator and absolve the innocent. Here you have cases where they absolve the innocent, but we don't believe them because the innocent have confessed. And so the DNA doesn't matter anymore.
In the case of Robert Taylor, Jonathan Barr, and James Harden, DNA found inside the 14-year-old victim, Katrisa Matthews, was also retested, and a match was made to Willie Randolph, a 34-year-old convicted rapist with 39 arrests. Peter Neufeld says prosecutors rejected the DNA evidence and instead came up with an unusual theory to explain it all away.
They suggest perhaps after the kids killed her, this man wandered by and committed an act of necrophilia.
Necrophilia. A lot of our viewers want to know what that means.
Having sex with a dead person.
It's possible. We have seen cases like that, but
Possible?
it is, and we've seen it in other cases.
It's possible that this convicted rapist wandered past an open field and had sex with a 14-year-old girl who was dead.
Well, there's all kinds of possibilities out there, and what I'm saying is that I don't know what happened.
Okay, so has anyone heard of Anita Alvarez before? Does anyone know who Laquan McDonald is? Okay, so in Chicago last year, a 16-year-old boy was shot 16 times by a police officer. And the police officer said that Laquan McDonald was coming at him with a knife. Does this case ring any bells? Yeah. And so the police officer got out of his car and within 6 seconds had shot Laquan McDonald 16 times. Now, the police dashboard cameras recorded everything that happened, and Laquan McDonald was heading away from the police officer. He was walking away, directly away, and the police officer had said that he was trying to attack him. So it was very clear that something untoward was happening. And Ms. Alvarez had that video. She also had witness testimony. She also had many other items of evidence that showed that this police officer had not operated in the way that he should have. And she didn't bring any charges against him for over a year. Okay, so she's currently up for re-election, and there's a huge push in Chicago to get her out of office. But the reason why I bring that up is because when we talk about wrongful convictions, one of the main things that we need to look at are the ways that our system is stacked to work in a way that ignores evidence that can make sure that people are fairly convicted, all right, or fairly tried. And when we have evidence and when we can show those things and we're still working against the state who insists on holding up their wrong information and continuing their wrongful practices, we're really up against quite a bit, even with DNA testing. So our work has to actually be, it has to be immaculate, it has to be perfect at all times, because even with the best forensic evidence at our disposal, we're still making fights like this. So how do we do DNA testing? How does this whole thing work? It starts with DNA. Okay, now DNA is the genetic blueprint of the human body. Everyone in this room, we all share about 99.8% of the same DNA. Everyone in this room has 99% of the same DNA. But there's just a tiny chunk that all human beings have that is different. And we're testing a very particular part of that different DNA to see what we can find. Now, every bit of DNA usually codes to something. It usually says something about our bodies, right? It tells us that human beings have 2 eyes in the front of their face and a nose and a mouth and 2 ears here. But the parts of the DNA that we're using to test are saying that my nose looks like my nose, which makes me look like Karen Thompson and not like anyone else in this room. Okay? So we take that chunk, and from that tiny little chunk, we're testing a very particular set of what we call alleles or loci. Okay? And those loci give us all the information that we need to have. And if we get a full profile from those 13 loci, we're able to put it into a database and match it, if possible, to someone who's already been convicted or to evidence that was gathered from a crime scene that was never solved. Now, DNA is basically a chromosome, right? So that huge genetic ladder, that helix that is bound up in every one of our cells. And so we have all the information available. And what's beautiful about the technology that we're working with now is that we don't even need a lot of it. We've gotten to the point where we can get a full profile from as little as 8 cells. And that's 2016. So who knows what we're going to have in 5 years. But right now, we are dealing with kind of the best science to find out the best information. So where's DNA found? And this is going to be a very interactive presentation, so I want people to just shout things out or raise your hand, and I'll call on you. But where do we find DNA? Sorry? Blood? Yes? Hair? I'll get back to hair. Hair is a little complicated, but we do find it in hair. Where else? Skin. Where else? In the back. Saliva. Where else? Semen. What else? So yes, we got saliva. Where else? Vaginal secretions. Okay? So basically anything that our body does that sheds things, we're going to find DNA. Now hair, who said hair? Hair is complicated. Why is hair complicated? Okay. That's not quite it, but hair, yes. You need the root of the hair. You do need the root of the hair for one particular kind of testing, and that's what we call STR testing. And the reason why is because hair roots are basically what? Skin, right? And skin has cells that have a nucleus in them that we can test because they have that DNA molecule in the middle of them. But the hair root, your actual hair, does not have those kinds of cells, right? It doesn't have a nucleated cell. So we have to do a different kind of testing on that. And that's called mitochondrial testing. Now, mitochondrial testing is not in that nuclear cell. It's in a different part of the cell. And it's the information that is passed down from your mother. Okay? Every woman who gives birth passes on this mitochondrial DNA. And that's how, when we do testing, you can say, well, Karen Thompson, even though there is slavery, and even though you're dragged from somewhere we don't know where and who your people are, we do know that you come from some group of people in Ghana. And that's because that one mother in Ghana passed down her DNA to me, right, millennia later. So we can still use that testing to distinguish people. It's just that we don't have a database like we do for the other kind, the STR testing, that we can get from skin cells. So it's still probative, and it's still important, and we can still use it, but not in the same way, okay? So you got them all, that's good. We got blood, we have semen, saliva, skin and sweat, and hair, okay? Now, what this means is that the world is a very, very, very messy place. So when we get to crime scenes, when we go through evidence that was collected from crime scenes, we are pretty sure that we can find DNA in a lot of places, all right? So somebody was smoking a cigarette. What do you think they're leaving behind? All over the place. Okay, if they had a beer, saliva. You would not believe how many rape cases the rapist says to the victim, "Get me a glass of water." All right? Once they get that glass of water, we get some saliva. Crotch of underwear. What do you think happens on a crotch of underwear after a rape? Sometimes blood, but blood is probably from the victim, right? What else? Semen, right? So if someone has ejaculated, and we're talking about biological facts, so I hope no one's feeling uncomfortable. But if someone ejaculates, that semen can leak after the woman or the man puts their underwear back on, and we can test that that semen, all right? Now, everyone's wearing a shirt. I'm sure someone in here is wearing a shirt that's their favorite shirt. Now, if someone took a shirt off, or if they were running, or if someone grabbed a jacket as someone was trying to get away and they left it at the scene, where do you think we can test on that jacket? In the armpits, right? If you're sweating. In your collar, you know how your collar can kind of get dirty? All of that is skin cells. All of that is skin matter. So it's rich, probative biology. You've got a baseball cap on, sir. If that fell off your head, we can test the brim of that baseball cap. And we've gotten 3 different exonerations from baseball caps. We can even get it from your glasses, right? And that's something that we call wearer DNA, because just something that's rubbing all the time, that's enough to get skin cells from. We even had a case, and that's the last thing in this list here, where somebody actually ate chicken. Don't ask me why you would do that in the middle of a crime. But somebody ate chicken at the crime scene, and we were able to test the chicken bones and get DNA and find a profile. Okay, so we're working in a very, very rich place to find the right and wrong perpetrators in any crime. And the only thing that we have to face is not finding evidence. So I talked about mitochondrial DNA testing, but these other 2 tests, the STR and the YSTR testing, are kind of the mainstays of our work. Now, when we talk about chromosomes and we talk about DNA, you get 2 different kinds of chromosomes from your parents, right? Now, women have what kind of chromosomes? Just scream it out loudly if you know. XX, okay? Women have 2 X chromosomes, one from their mother, from her egg, one from her father, from his sperm, okay? Males have what? XY, and they get an X from their mother and a Y from their father, right? So what we can do now is only test for the Y chromosome. Now, why do you think that would be important when we're doing testing? Shout it out, come on.
It gives a gender.
It gives a sex. It does not give a gender. It gives a sex, right? Because what would that show if you just get a Y chromosome?
It's a male, right?
That it's a male, okay? So say you had a rape case where there are multiple rapists. What do you think we could see? We could see both the men, right? We could tweeze it out now so that you can't just, if there are 2 perpetrators, we can find them both, right? And that's very important because that helps us actually see more with less. And the other thing that can happen is that when you have an STR profile, which is the normal DNA testing that we do, if there isn't a lot of DNA, say the rapist wore a condom, it's going to be harder to find the DNA because the victim's DNA, there's just going to be a lot more of it, right? But if the rapist used the condom, how does the rapist get the condom on? Come on, this you guys know, I know. How do you get a condom on?
Using your hand.
Right. So the rapist's cells, skin cells, are on that condom. And those cells get into the victim. Okay, so when we use YSTR testing, we can tweeze out with those 8 cells from all of the cells that are there from the victim, we can tweeze out the 8 male cells just from putting the condom on with YSTR testing. All right, so if any of you are in science, thank you, and keep going, because these tools are powerful and they're getting better every day. So why do these convictions happen? Now, I know you've watched 2 movies. You've watched the Central Park 5, you've seen Conviction, and you just saw my little piece about Miss Alvarez. So you know some of the causes, right? But we're going to talk about those in depth. I'm going to show you another video now. And I forgot to bring my t-shirt. I actually tried to get Jean to get me to a Starbucks so I could get a gift certificate, which we didn't have time to do. But I'm going to send you, the person who gets the right answer here, a t-shirt from the Innocence Project. And they're brand new t-shirts and they're really good. So I need everyone to pay attention to this video, okay? What I want you to do is count the number of times that the people in the white t-shirts in this video bounce the ball to other people in white t-shirts. Okay? I'm going to say it again. Has anyone seen this video? All right, if you've seen it, you don't tell the answer, okay? When I start rolling it, you don't get to participate because you've seen the video, and I want someone to get the right answer. But what I want you to count are the people, they're all playing basketball. I want you to count the people in the white t-shirts who are bouncing and passing the ball to other people in white t-shirts. Not air passes, but bouncing it on the ground, okay? And the person who gets the right answer will get a t-shirt. And who gets it first? Ready? Woo! 2. Come on, I need more answers. 7. In the back, wait, sorry, in the back. 14? That's better. What was that? 7. Okay. 13? Okay. Do you have any? 15? Okay, so we have 2 to 15. All right, did anyone see anything else? All right, hold on for a sec. Hold on for a sec. Did anybody see anything else? Yeah. What did anyone else see? Who saw the black gorilla? Who did not see the black gorilla? Raise your hand, honestly. Who didn't see the black gorilla? All right, I'm going to show it again. I'm going to show it again. Everybody watch one more time. Okay, so it's going to be a little hard to give the t-shirt, but whoever gets up here at the end of the presentation first, I promise I will send the t-shirt to Jean and I'll get it to you. But that is what we call a system variable, okay? It's one of the things that leads to wrongful convictions. That was eyewitness misidentification. Now, everyone in this room has a big heart and is kind, I'm sure, and is very smart and is very thoughtful. But almost 3/4 of you missed the gorilla walking through the picture. Okay, and the reason why you missed the gorilla walking through the picture is because I told you what to look for, didn't I? And I told you that I was going to give you a prize if you found what I wanted you to look for. And there is a prize, but actually the number is 11, so I didn't even hear anyone say 11. but that wasn't even what you were really supposed to be seeing, right? And yes? Sorry? Eyewitness identification. There'll be more, but for right now it's that. What was that? It was 11. I think the right answer is 11. But the point is, if I tell you what to look for, and if I pull your attention away from something, you are not going to pay attention to the entire picture. And you're going to be so focused on something else that you are going to miss the gorilla walking through the room. Okay? And that is one of the main reasons that people get sent to prison for what they didn't do. Sorry, it's an estimator variable. And this is one of the things that we're working on at the Innocence Project with our policy department, because what we're trying to say to police officers and what we're trying to do when we are working with authorities on cases is to say, look, certain things, they don't work right. If you're a victim of a crime and someone has a gun in your face, you're not going to be able to identify someone's face the way you think you are. You think you're doing a great job. But when you're looking at a gun, you're not focusing on someone's face, you're not focusing on what they are wearing, you're not focusing on how tall they are. Your attention is pulled away. And that's natural, that's human. We can't focus on everything in perfect ways all the time. We just can't do it. And so when we talk about witness ID, we always have to be careful about what was going on at the time of that witness ID. All right, because we miss pictures, we miss things that are bigger. So that's one thing. Now I'm going to show you another video. Now this time I'm not pulling the wool over your eyes. I actually just want you to look at everything. We just talked about looking at everything. So look at every single thing in this video. Pay attention. I'll even show it to you twice if you want. Look at everything that you can, okay? Confer with your friends, and then I'm going to ask you a question at the end. Do you want to look at that again? Okay, so I want you to pay attention, look at the signs, see what the signs say, look at what people are wearing. Just try to pay really close attention. Okay. Which one was the last woman to walk through? Who, okay, I want you to look at these women. Which one was, I just want you to pick one. The last one to walk through. Who says it's number 4? Okay, who says number 1? 2? No one for 2. 3? Okay, and 5. 1. Okay, so you guys are pretty much on 4. Who was saying none? You win the prize. Maybe you get the t-shirt. None of them were. Okay, all right. I love that sound. I love it when everyone is horrified. That you should be horrified. You should be horrified, because this is the other way that eyewitness identification gets people in prison. Okay? So this is what we call a system variable. Now, I want to just say that you guys were the 4s were really confident. You were pretty confident. There were hands up. There were people yelling out 4. Okay? And that's because I told you that one of those people was the last woman who went through the frame. So what did you do? You picked somebody, because I told you they were there. Right? Now, what if I had told you that it wasn't necessarily so that that woman was in one of those pictures? Would you have picked someone? You might have, but you wouldn't have been certain that you had to. Okay? And so this is another thing that we are working with, and these are the things that the police officers do. Okay? So if someone comes in and says, I was mugged, and they say, okay, well, we've got people to put in a lineup, they'll say, your guy's in here, so just identify your guy. So you just said it, but what happens? Right. Right. You try to identify the person, and you pick the wrong person, but you think, oh, it's close enough, and I know he's in there, so that must be him. And that's how we send people to jail. Okay, so one of the things that we are doing is saying, look, police officers, what you have to do from now on is tell them that that person might not be in there. You have to change the ways that you get people to do IDs, because we are humans and we make mistakes, and those mistakes lead to bigger mistakes. Okay? So these are the changes that we're asking police officers, police officers to do. We are saying, look, they might not be there. We're also getting the police officers who are doing the investigation not to be in the room when the victim's picking the person that they think is their perp is, and that way there's no kind of energy from the cop to say that's the right person. We're also we're asking for them to video record the procedures. Why do you think that's important? To videotape the IDs. Well, what do you think police might do?
Try to get the person to choose well.
Right. They might be saying, are you sure? You want to just look at that guy again? Are you sure? Right? So we want to make sure that it's a clean ID. And part of doing that is to record it. Okay? And we want to just make sure that police officers are doing the best investigations they can. So when you go to a crime scene, you want to look at who your witnesses are. You want your police officers to think about who they're asking to come in to make the ID. Are there reasons why this person might not be trusted? Are there reasons that would make their ID a bad one? Right? So we're working on that with our policy department, and we're making changes, slowly but surely. False confessions. Now you saw the Central Park 5 case. Why do false confessions happen? In the back. I can't hear you, you have to yell. Absolutely. Now, who thinks that they would, who here would falsely confess to something?
I was watching a video, and it could be any one of us, because I was watching a video yesterday that a professor at a university he was like, I'm going to give you guys a quiz. I'm going to tell you about this piece of information that actually happened on the news. So he tells them the story, and it's about a murder. And he doesn't, then after he's like, remember this because I'm telling you, I'm going to quiz you guys on this. And then after he asked them, so who remembers that this person got killed because of gunshot and stabbing afterwards? And he was like, you guys all just falsely confessed because I didn't mention murder weapons, and that's how the police get you.
Right. Right. Sometimes they drop information, right? And so that's not even necessarily about a false confession, right? But that's how we get to the place of having a false confession. But everyone here would probably say, I would never admit to murdering my parents. Can't we say that unless you did actually murder your parents? You probably would say, I didn't murder my parents, right? But who's not had lunch yet? Okay, so we're all probably verging a little bit on hunger, okay? If I took you into a police station right now, and I kept you up for another 16 hours without giving you anything to eat, and that whole time I had police officers coming back and forth, in and out, asking you about murdering your parents, and say you were 17, 16, and you were terrified, at some point you're going to start breaking down. Okay, and again, it's a human condition, and part of this entire work is about human frailty. And police officers doing their job, and I want to be very honest, if something happens to me, I'm going to call a police officer. I believe that police officers are doing good work for the most part, but the fact is they're trying to solve cases. And they're trying to solve cases in the quickest way possible, and sometimes that means using methods that are harsh and that can be flawed. And part of the false confession issues that we're looking at is the harshness of the tactic. And when you keep people up, when you don't feed them, when you intimidate them, and then when you sprinkle these wrong facts, or excuse me, not wrong facts, but when you sprinkle the facts of the case in with the conversations that you're having, people will start to put together stories and say things just so they can go home. And what they usually think is, oh, you know what? I didn't do this. I didn't do it. So I know I'm saying this now, but I'm just saying this to get home, and then it's gonna be clean. It's gonna be fine. Like, my lawyer is gonna prove I didn't do this. Everyone knows I didn't do this. I have an alibi. There are all these other things. I know I'm gonna be fine. But the thing is, once you confess, it's out there. And most people don't believe that you would confess to something that you didn't do. Okay, so one of the things that we are working on, once again, is videotaping. Because what did you see in the Central Park Five with their confessions? When did they start taping? No one remembers? The last hour. And they'd been in there for 14, 16 hours, and they started taping the last hour of that confession. Yeah. Are you stretching, or are you asking a question? Okay, so what we are saying is you have to start taping from the very moment a suspect comes in so that we can see what the progress of that confession was and whether it's legit or not. Okay? And finally, this is another, after eyewitness confessions, this is the second biggest issue with wrongful convictions. It's bad science. Okay?
In 1987, Ron Williamson and Dennis Fritz were tried separately in Oklahoma and convicted of a brutal rape and murder. Questionable forensic evidence tied them to the scene of the crime. Williamson received the death penalty. Fritz was sentenced to life in prison. Fritz and Williamson were innocent, and they were exonerated by DNA evidence. In over 50% of DNA exonerations, the forensic evidence was unvalidated or improper. There were a host of problems with the forensics used to convict these innocent people. Analysts testifying as experts at criminal trials made invalid claims, false claims, unsupported by science. They made serious errors because they used unreliable methods which were either error-prone or lacked repeatability. They also engaged in scientific negligence, even outright misconduct. They concealed evidence of innocence, and they used vague and confusing terms that jurors could not be expected to understand. In the Fritz and Williamson case, two types of forensics were presented: blood and hair analysis. Blood or serological analysis has sound science to back it up, but in this case, the analyst reached exaggerated and false conclusions that made totally inconclusive ABO blood typing seem like evidence of their guilt. In contrast, microscopic hair comparison is not based on sound science. We do not know what percentage of the population has hair with particular microscopic characteristics. Nevertheless, the analysts claimed to find a powerful match. Fritz and Williamson each served 12 years for a crime they did not commit. At one point, Williamson was only 5 days from execution. In 1995, a federal judge took an important stand against faulty forensic testimony and ruled that microscopic hair comparison testimony was too error-prone, scientifically unreliable, and too grounded in subjective opinion to be admissible. That ruling paved the way for the DNA tests that cleared them. The Innocence Project works at the local, state, and federal levels to ensure scientifically sound quality forensics. Nationally, the Innocence Project supports creating an independent, science-focused federal entity that will stimulate research to establish the extent of the validity and reliability of forensic science disciplines, and to set and enforce standards to ensure the proper use of forensic science.
So how many people watch CSI? Okay, so you watch CSI, and every week they're doing some crazy thing with science, aren't they? They're just splashing things around and saying, look, it's glowing. That must be clear evidence of this person being here and murdering someone else. Like, there's all sorts of things on CSI that we're seeing now that people think are real, right? And it's gotten to the point now that when we get into courtrooms, we have to tell jurors, CSI is a TV show. It's fake. And that science is not real science, okay? Because what's happening is people start to believe that these practices work, and they don't work. Okay, so the FBI recently came out with a press release, and they had to tell courts all over the country that they were reopening hundreds of cases where they had sent people to prison based on hair microscopy. Now, he kind of talked about it in the video, but does anyone know what that is? Hair microscopy? Okay, what it is if you found, yep. Exactly. So that you look at hair under a microscope. Okay, so if you took a hair out of your head right now, and I took a hair out of my head right now, all that you could actually say, if you put it under a microscope, is, okay, these hairs probably came from a black person. That's one thing that you could say. And maybe they could be like, she needs to get a haircut because she has a lot of split ends. That's about it. But what we've been doing for decades is saying that those two hairs can be compared and matched to a person. And it's just not possible. There's nothing about hair that is distinctive enough to do that. They're not fingerprints, but we've been sending people to jail on that. One of the other sciences we've been using is bite mark evidence. Okay, so what's bite mark evidence? On somebody's skin. Okay, so say it's a rape case or it's a murder case and the perpetrator bit the victim. What people have been doing for 20 years is saying, oh, you know what? That tooth mark, that matches Karen Thompson. I can tell you that beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm 100% sure. Now, does that sound right? Well, I mean, we get dental records from people when they're in airplane crashes, right? When there's not any body left. You can compare teeth, right? Because you can match them. You can match teeth to a person. But can you match teeth to a person if it's on someone else's skin? But you can't, right? You can't do that. Because if you bite yourself right now, I can honestly tell you that that's not going to look the same as your teeth. Because it's going to stretch. It's skin. It moves. It's alive. It does different things. And the other thing is when we do science, you have to validate it. You have to go to a lab, do a test, and have other people do the same test and come up with the same result. If you can't do that, it's not real science, okay? It's guessing. And so how do you validate bite marks? What would you have to do? You'd have to get volunteers who would be willing to be bitten over and over and over again. And you'd have to do that to children, and you'd have to do that to adults. Do you think that's gonna work? No, right? So there's no real science behind bite marks, but yet and still, we've sent hundreds of people to jail based on bite mark science. Now, what do you think we've done at the Innocence Project to exonerate those people? What happens along with a bite mark? What do you leave? Saliva. So what we've been able to do is take the swab from that bite mark and test it. And what's happened over and over again is the DNA that we got from that saliva on that bite mark did not match the person that they said that bite mark matched. Okay, so we are proving through DNA testing all of what we call junk science. The other issue that leads to wrongful convictions is misconduct, straight up misconduct. And what does that mean? What's misconduct? By who? By the police, right? Or the district attorneys, by the lawyers who are trying it for the state. And what could some of that misconduct be? Well, some of it's not giving over all the evidence that could prove that somebody's innocent, right? And in the case of the Central Park 5, they didn't turn over DNA testing that they did, right? So there's some misconduct there. But there's also police officers who maybe purposefully get these wrongful confessions. There's all sorts of bad acting by the state that leads to bad outcomes. Snitches, informants. Now, if someone sees a crime, you see a crime. That's real. No one's trying to take that away from anybody, and we need people to say, look, I saw something wrong. But if you're in prison, and I have an exoneree I'm going to show you who got out of prison last year. He was put into prison because 3 men came forward and said that he confessed to them. Now, all 3 men were doing about 4 years for not big crimes, but petty crimes, and all 3 men were promised by the police that they'd be let out early. Now, if you don't want to do prison time and you're in prison and the police say you can get out of prison if you just tell me a little something, you think people are going to tell the truth? You think they are? They're not. They're not going to tell the truth because they're incentivized not to tell the truth. And that's what happens over and over again. We get snitch testimony where people said what they thought the cops wanted to hear. And based on that, people get sent away. Yes?
I know someone who's being tried for murder, but he has an alibi where he was at a different place. And one of his friends who was supposedly there at the scene, who saw him murdering the person, he had probably about 5 years to 10. So the police was like, okay, tell me who you saw, who was there, and I'll let you, get off on protective custody. He's like, okay, yeah, I saw this guy there. And so instead of actually believing the guy's alibi, they just locked him up and said, you're being tried for murder.
It happens all the time. Sadly, it happens all the time, right? So these are all of the things that we're trying to get in the way of, right? Because otherwise, the results they're horrifying. They're horrifying. So who gets wrongfully convicted? Do you think it's all black people? Is it all women? No, it's a little bit of everybody. And I want, if there's any takeaway that you leave here today with, I want you to know that I don't care who you are, how good you are, how great your grades are, how much you're loved by your family. Anyone in this room, including myself, could be convicted of a crime that they did not do. Okay, so what we need to work on as a culture, as a community of students, are ways to make sure that we are all protected. Okay, and by being protected, I mean we need to bring clear focus and a clear equality to how we're convicting people, how we're bringing crimes to trial, and how we're resolving them. Yes?
I have a question. Can a case get thrown out by summary judgment for not turning in a piece of evidence in discovery?
So summary judgment it's a civil thing, so it's not a criminal thing. But usually when we find out that someone hasn't turned over evidence, it doesn't usually happen at the time of the trial. It usually happens on appeal. So unfortunately, it usually happens after someone's already been sent to prison. And then when that lawyer, that appellate lawyer is what we call them, takes on the case, they might go through the record again and figure out that something wasn't turned over. And so if that happens, then that person can be entitled to a new trial, or they can have their entire conviction overturned if it was a central piece of evidence. So here's two more videos, and then I'm gonna just take questions about some of our clients. And again, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I hope to have a really good conversation after this.
You're the best of the best when it comes to DNA evidence. This is pretty much known throughout the country, and I desperately need your help.
My name is Jonathan Barr, and I was wrongfully convicted of a murder and a rape of my friend Katrisa Matthews, and I spent almost 20 years in prison for that crime.
I spent 15 years inside of prison.
I spent 11 years and 3 months in prison.
20 years, 9 months, 5 days in prison for a crime I didn't commit.
The system failed us, tremendously. It failed us.
It was a great relief to be able to walk out of there a free man after 14 years. I'm able to spend time with my grandkids. I can hold them in my arms. I can take them to church. Take them out to eat.
I can remember my first day coming home from prison. I sat up and watched the sun come up that morning. And you see the sunlight every morning rise in prison, but to actually feel it, as a free man outside of the fences, it was a totally different experience. The whole time I'm watching it coming up, I'm saying, I'm free. I'm truly free.
Okay, so questions? No one has any questions? Yes. Oh, thank you.
You can just give us a minute. I'm just going to pass the microphone around so we can get your questions.
What would be the craziest case that you've ever worked on?
The craziest case was my client, Louis Fogel, who was exonerated last August. He was convicted and sent to prison in 1981 for the rape and murder of a 14-year-old girl. And that rape and murder happened in 1976. Okay, now to put that in perspective, I was born 1971. So I was 5 when this rape and murder happened, and I was 10 when he went to prison. Okay, so he was interviewed by the police in 1976 when this happened, and he said I wasn't there, I have an alibi, everything was good. And they talked to someone else who they tracked down after the victim's sister gave them a description. Okay, so they found this guy. He talked to the police 5 different times. He told them that he was present when the woman was murdered, and he named different people as being there with him each time, okay? Then 5 years later, he checks himself into a mental institution, this person, and he's put under hypnosis by an amateur hypnotist. And I mean, when I say amateur, I mean it was like a guy who watched a video and like had a watch and went like this in front of his face. And he then named my client, okay? My client was then taken into the cops, and 24 hours later, these 3 snitches that I talked about earlier said that he had confessed to them. And that was it. He went to prison, okay? And he was there for 34 years. We did testing on a swab taken from the rape kit of the victim, and we found sperm, and it didn't match him. But he was sent to prison on the testimony of a psychotic, literally psychotic person who was under fake hypnosis. And the testimony was so bad that the judge said, this can't come in. He can't actually be brought into court, and this testimony can't stand. But it was good enough to get an arrest warrant, which is what got my client convicted and which is what led to the alleged confessions. So does that even make sense? The guy's testimony wasn't even enough, but he got sent to prison for 34 years.
Did that man, the psychotic person, did he have anything to gain from saying your client's name?
No, because he was just mentally ill. He was a mentally ill person, and they took his word over my client's.
Was it a black victim?
No, it was all white people. Yeah, rural Pennsylvania. Yeah, it's totally insane. And he had an 8-month-old son when he went into prison.
Hello, my name is Sarai Flores. Nice to meet you. So I'm listening to this PowerPoint, and my question was, do you believe the forensic scientists who handle this evidence, they need to be really skilled and trained to be able to handle that evidence?
I think some of them do. I mean, and this goes for everything. Like I said, that I think that obviously most cops are good cops, and most prosecutors are good prosecutors, and most forensic scientists are great forensic scientists. That's all they do. That's what they do. And what's great about forensic scientists is, for the most part, they don't care what the answer is. They're just there for the science, right? So I think the vast majority of forensic scientists are great. But there are other forensic scientists who are just there to get the answer that maybe the prosecution wants to hear, okay? And so there's issues there, and we've had issues with that, where people have lied about the results, like you saw before, or they won't back down on the fact that the science isn't valid. So with the bite mark evidence, we're fighting like this today. We're fighting. I'm going back to a meeting where we're going to be talking about some of this, because the bite mark people, they make money, right? Every time they get called into court to testify about a bite mark, they're getting paid, okay? So once you start getting paid for being able to do that testimony, you want to then go to school, even though you can't go to school for bite marks, but you want to get trained, and people run those trainings, and they're making money, and suddenly it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and everyone's very invested in the wrong science. So I don't know that it's not that they're not trained, I just think that things get corrupted, right? And so one of the things that's great about DNA is unless it's been tampered with, you can't really corrupt it. It is what it is. And that's why some of our clients get included. That's why sometimes our clients, we show that they're guilty, right? Because we're not there to mess with the science, and our labs aren't there to mess with the science. They just want to get the answers.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of your clients ever had to take an Alford plea? The only time I've ever heard of it is a case in 1993, West Memphis 3, where 3 children were murdered. There was no evidence to tie the 3 teenagers that they convicted, and it took, I think, 17 years later for DNA testing to, I guess, remove them from the scene of the crime.
Do you want to tell people what an Alford plea is?
Yeah, and so that's when the people that were already convicted have to confess, although they have to confess, but they still can maintain their innocence. They take that plea, then they're released from jail.
Right, it's a weird legal thing, but it's basically saying, I'm not gonna say that I'm not guilty, but I'm also not gonna say that I am innocent, right? So it's this weird limbo in legal land, and it's what people do sometimes when they have to go to trial and say they're scared of getting the death penalty, but they also want to maintain their innocence, so they take an Alford plea. And we have a bunch of clients who do, and what's weird about the way we're lawyers is that we come in at a kind of a funny place in a case. So if I got if I got charged with murdering someone, I would go to trial on that murder, and then the jury goes out, excuse me as I start to stutter because I'm hungry. The jury goes out and they come back in and they say Karen Thompson's guilty, okay? So then I have a couple of options. I can appeal that charge, or I can go to prison, right? And if I appeal it, what we do is we kind of come in after that appeal as the Innocence Project. So if someone has taken an Alford plea, it probably happened before we got there. But it does happen. We have many clients who have taken those pleas.
After dealing with the clients, do you still keep a relationship with them, or do you just keep it moving?
Well, one of the things that's beautiful about the IP is that we call it a 360. We're like a circle as an organization, because we take their cases, people write us, they say, I need your help, and then we take their cases. Then we assign it to a lawyer. That lawyer works with them until we find out they're guilty, or we can't find evidence, or we exonerate them. And then if they get exonerated and they're out, we have social workers on staff. So our social workers work with our exonerees very closely, and for the year after they come out, we've had a donor who actually gave us a lot of money to help our exonerees for that year. So we can help them buy a car, we can pay their rent, we get them back on their feet, because after you've been in for 34 years, now, I mean, half of you aren't even 25, right? So I want you to imagine, like I was telling you about my client who's been in for 34 years. When he went in, no one even knew what a cell phone was. Okay, so when he came out, this entire world was not what he knew. He didn't know anything. He didn't even know how to apply for a job. He used to be a mechanic. He couldn't fix a car because cars were so different. Okay, so we need to make sure that they can actually just function, and they have PTSD for the most part. They're in a rough place. So we have social workers, but then yes, we absolutely have relationships with them after, and we, in fact, every year have a conference where all of our exonerees get together and they get to talk, and we get to see them all, and we all have like a moment where we can recognize each other in an easy, calm way. So yes, we do. That was a long answer.
I just wanted to ask, how long is DNA still accurate after it's been discovered?
Like if it's picked up from a crime scene?
Yeah.
So I keep talking about Lewis, but he's like the perfect case in some ways, because that happened in 1976.
And it was still accurate from the crime scene?
Yeah, and the testing was done in 2015.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But that's not normal. That's not normal, I'm not gonna lie, because what usually happens is we don't keep evidence in a great way, right? And back in 1976, do you think they were anticipating that we could have this kind of DNA testing? No. So sometimes we were lucky, and we have a place where the cops took a rape kit and they did store it in a way that helped. But most of the time, evidence isn't kept in a very good way, and that's another way that we're trying to get in there. We're trying to tell cops you have to keep evidence you have to keep it. You can't get rid of it, first of all. And then you have to store it in a way that it's not going to get destroyed. Because what happens over and over again is they'll be like, oh, there was a flood. We're so sorry. All the evidence is gone. There was a flood. And sometimes it's true. Sandy destroyed one of the biggest NYPD evidence lockers. So we lost a ton of evidence in Sandy. And Katrina in Louisiana took out almost everything. Right? So, it's a constant struggle because we might have a great case. We might have a great case and we just cannot find the evidence. But if we do find it, and if there's anything there to be tested, we usually can test it.
Okay, so you know how you said people are falsely convicted?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's a long time ago, like from 1981, and he's not convicted? Is the case reopened again if you don't find whoever did it?
Wait, say that again? If
you know how the old case you said, oh, the guy didn't do it?
Right.
He didn't do it, and they know it's not him and it's not his semen. Would they reopen the case to try to find the other person?
It depends. It depends. And so one of the things that's also very odd about our work is that once we prove someone's innocence, you think that, we get those results back and then I say, hey, here are the results, and then the next day that person's leaving prison. It never works that way. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to write a motion and say to the district attorney, this is the evidence we found, this man is innocent, you gotta let him out. And sometimes the district attorney will say, no, that's not gonna work, sorry. I have a client, my colleague is right now in Philadelphia, and you can look this up in Rolling Stone. His name is Anthony Wright is the name of the client, and Rolling Stone did a huge article about him because we figured out that not only did the police plant evidence, but we got results from the victim who had been raped, so it was semen. Semen can only come from one place. That semen hit to a rapist in the neighborhood who was a crackhead. None of it matched our client. The police not only will not let him out, they won't even let him get out on bail, they actually are going to retry him. Okay, so it's just a crapshoot, and sometimes they're absolutely invested in not letting people out. Sometimes they're really great about it, and it takes 3 more weeks.
Okay.
So my question is...
He's talking. Okay.
So my question is, how and when did you decide this is what you wanted to be part of, the Innocence Project?
I've always believed in that I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. That was really clear for me. I didn't always want to know I wanted to be a lawyer, but I've always been very invested in making this world more just. Okay, and again, like I said to you, my parents come from very, very poverty-stricken backgrounds, and they raised me to be very aware of what I was capable of and what I wasn't capable of, and what things were outside of me to change and what things were inside of me to change. And so I believe in the law. I really believe in it. I think it's a tool that is transformative. I think if you just look at the 19th century and you look at what the law has done for people of color, what it's done for women, like there's a way that you can fight on the facts, right? Like you can have all the feelings in the world that you want to have. You can say anything that you believe about people. You can be racist, you can be whatever you want to be, but the facts are the facts, and your feelings have nothing to do with the facts. Right? And I think that one of the things about the law that is so beautiful is that you can prove truth in the law. And so for me, I thought as a black woman, this is the best way that I can prove truth, is by doing this kind of work. And so it came very naturally to me, even though being a lawyer, I didn't even start thinking about it till I was like 28. So I hope that there are people here who will be inspired to do this. And I know I've been down on prosecutors and I've been down on police officers, but we need good prosecutors. We need good ones. So I don't care how you get into the criminal justice system, but I hope you'll if you do law, that you will get into it knowing that we're all supposed to be here to fight for justice. And sometimes that means bringing a rapist to trial, and sometimes that means freeing someone who was wrongfully convicted of a rape. But I honestly believe that the law is like the best promise of America. if I had to say my Donald Trumpism, it would be that law is what makes America great. And even though it's very flawed, and I see it every day, it's like my naive, hopeful thing is to believe that I can make it work still.
Thank you. What can we do to help to support? What can we do to help to support the Innocence Project and your goal, which is to help to make things fairer to everyone?
Go be on juries. Okay, I know every time I'm on Facebook and people are like, oh, I got called into jury duty, the first thing I say is, I am so happy for you. Because you're smart and you're invested and you understand and you are gonna be on a jury, and that is the best gift that any criminal defense attorney could have. So I am asking you, when your parents say they don't want to be on a jury, when you get called for jury duty, go be on a jury. You heard what I said today, right? If you have a prosecutor who's telling you that they're convicting someone based on some crazy eyewitness ID, you saw the video. You know how you didn't see the gorilla. And if you're on that jury, you can say, you know what? I don't think you proved your case beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, they have a duty. It's not the criminal defense's duty. Like, when you go into a courtroom, the prosecutor has to prove it. And when we have jurors who don't question the role that the prosecutor has to play, we're in trouble. So I beg you to go to do your jury duty. I beg you. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you can talk about what I've said to you today, go to our website, look at these videos, get engaged, talk about these issues. Because like I said, it could be any of us. So even though you might not know anyone, even though you might not know someone who's incarcerated, we have big problems in our system, and that's gonna impact every single one of us. And the third thing is, whether you're guilty or not, we are really at a really nasty place right now in our country. And we're incarcerating more people than any other nation on this planet. All right, we're incarcerating, we have like 8 million people who are behind bars. And what's really messed up about that is, who knows what the 13th Amendment says? What's the 13th Amendment of the Constitution? It's a big one. Okay, so the 13th Amendment bans slavery. All right, it says nobody should be subjected to involuntary servitude. But there's a but on that. What is the but? Okay, it says no slavery. There should be no slavery in the United States unless you've been duly convicted of a crime. So what does that mean?
We have over 8 million slaves?
Basically. Okay, and so what that means is that Starbucks and Victoria's Secret and all sorts of companies are paying prisons to let them use people who are incarcerated to do work. And they're paying those workers $14 a day for 12 hours of work. Now, do you think prisoners can unionize? Do you think they have any rights? So they're working in unsafe conditions, and they might have made the chairs in this auditorium. There's call centers in prisons. Like if you call to talk about maybe your phone service, they're putting call centers in prisons. Okay, so we're turning prisons into like a money-making factory, and you know that they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, right? Private prisons are now on the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, so what that means is that you can buy stock in prisons. Now, if you buy stock in prisons, how does a prison make money? How does a prison make money? Yes, you have to have more prisons and you have to have more prisoners, right? So what's the incentive to not convict people? Is there an incentive? No, right? So I want everyone here, again, this is the third, sorry, it's the longest answer in the history of mankind. But the third thing is I want you to go look at prisons and mass incarceration. Because we are really at a very crazy place right now where if you're starting to just incentivize getting people locked up, it's going to be really hard to disincentivize that. When people are making money off of bodies, It's really hard to get it to interrupt that. All right, because you're going to have people lobbying to change laws to make it easier to incarcerate people. You know, the 3 strikes and you're out laws, there's a reason why that happens. It's getting to the point where women who are on drugs and who have miscarriages, they're getting sent to jail. Like, it's bad. So I'm asking you to do that research. I'm asking you to talk to your friends about what you heard today and about what you read in Picking Cotton and these movies. And I'm really asking you to serve on juries, because that's something everybody can do, and you can make a huge, huge change. So please email me or write me or get in touch with Jean, and I'm happy to talk to you about this more. Go to law school. Don't get too in debt. And thank you for having me again today.
Thank you so much.